Hey everyone, Ariel Adams here with blog2watch.com. Please subscribe to Blog2Watch videos on YouTube and like this video if you find it useful. This is a review of the new Casio G-Shock G-Aviation GW-A1000 watch. That's a lot of names, so let's get down to it. This is a G-Shock, which is part of the G-Aviation line, which is like pilot watches that are G-Shocks. What makes it a pilot watch? I don't really know. Aside from the fact that it has a purely analog dial, you don't have too many of these in the G-Shock collection. I mean, G-Shock, is the original, like, bad boy, do anything digital watch. And so this has a lot of that sort of go anywhere, do anything feature set, but this is purely analog. There are no LCD screens on here, nothing like that. Of course, it's a quartz movement, but everything is done via these dials. And in the scheme of a lot of the Casio watches that are analog, this one is relatively straightforward. The dial's easy to read. You don't get confused. Some of the more complicated edifice models, for example, get a little bit overwhelming for my taste in terms of all the different things that they do and all the different features they have. It's not that the features themselves are confusing to understand, it's that using them is very, very difficult. So again, this model is the GW-A1000. It's new for 2012, and I just want you to get a look at the construction here. It's actually quite nice. This is a higher end G-Shock, which means you have a very nicely engraved metal back, metal crown, metal pushers, metal buckle here. The detailing is very nice. It uses their newer sort of upgraded plastic. It's got some heft to it. A lot of G-Shock things look like you just throw them around. And there's this red kind of ring right here with a screw sticking out of it. I don't know what that is, but when I see a screw, I want to unscrew it, and I have a feeling that's not a good idea with this thing. You don't want to do that. This has some interesting hidden features that you wouldn't know about. And let me just say a few things about durability. Digital watches, because they have basically no moving parts, is why you can throw them around. And when you get to something with hands, it becomes more complicated because what you get involved with is shock. Moving the hands out of position, hands being able to come off, things like that, which is a problem. So I can't say that a watch like this is going to be as durable as a digital watch with no moving parts, but they do a pretty good job. First of all, this has what Casio calls the tough movement, and there's, I think, a little indicator somewhere on here that says tough movement. I don't know where it is. I think it says it's somewhere on here. It says tough solar. There you go. I think in the dial it says it as well. Oh, there we go. So under Casio there you can see it says tough MVT. That stands for tough movement. What is tough movement? Well, they have a special system where if the watch is, dropped or hits something that forces the hands to move out of place, there's a small sensor in the watch which realigns them. So it's constantly checking to make sure the hands are in the right place and will realign them if it goes out. It's very, very cool, actually, and there's also a lot of other little durability things in here. So, this is about as durable as an analog watch gets. It doesn't get much more durable than this. If you hear a little noise somewhere in the background there, it might be the Devon Tread 1 that I reviewed recently. It's in the background here. It's making this little ticking noise. It's like, hey, pay attention to me. Anyways, this G-Shock is well, it beeps, but it's totally silent otherwise. So the first hidden feature I want to talk about is the thermometer. Did you know this had a thermometer? Honestly, if you didn't know this would have a thermometer in there, it would be very difficult to tell. There's a little indicator up on the top. This is plus and minus C for centigrade, but I'm sorry, for Celsius. But other than that, like, it doesn't say anything. And it has Fahrenheit as well. There's no indicators of Fahrenheit anywhere on the dial. What I want to say about, oh, there it is, this thermo on the back. Okay, all right. So it does say thermo somewhere. But honestly, it would be hard to tell. When you use this watch, you absolutely have to read the manual. I mean, absolutely, you have to read the manual. There is no way of getting around that. Why? Because the manual tells you how to use this thing. And if you don't read it, it's going to be very difficult to know. Which is ironic because in this watch, Casio has a new system which they call Smart Access. This crown looks a little bit different than most Casio G-Shock crowns, even the analog ones. And I'll get to that in a minute. There's just a lot to talk about in this watch. And if you don't have knowledge on how to use it, it's difficult. Is smart access smart? It's smarter. Once you get the hang of this watch, it's actually not such a big deal, but just doing some basic things can be a little bit frustrating because it's just not as straightforward. Also, they use a better crystal here. I know some of the less expensive ones have just plastic crystals. This one, I'm not sure what it is. It might be mineral. I doubt it's sapphire, but it's definitely a harder, higher quality crystal. So if you push this pusher here, while it's in the default time-telling mode, you go into thermometer settings. So how does this work? Well, you use the hands to read the temperature. So basically, the hour hand, when you're looking at Fahrenheit, doesn't really matter. You're going to look at these two hands right here. And so this one's going to be, okay, 7. So it was basically 7 and 8. So it would be 78 degrees right now. And again, if you want a proper reading, what you're going to want to do is take it off of your wrist for a while because it's going to get temperature from your hand. So you're going to want to sit it down for a while. So that's actually probably not 78 degrees in here. It's probably lower. But since I've been handling it, it's going to feel like it's hotter. This watch is solar powered. Light enters through the dial to charge the battery. So it doesn't ever need a battery change. That's good. It also syncs up with the atomic clock radio signals, so it's always accurate. And that also includes the calendar settings. So on the dial here, you have the time. There's a date window. This indicator over here has a few purposes, but on default, it shows the date. So you can see the little red hand pointing to Saturday. So it's going to tell you the day of the week and, of course, the date. It's also keeping track of the month and leap year and all that stuff. It's just not showing you that stuff. If you don't know what month it is, then this isn't the watch for you. And above here, you have a synchronized 24-hour hand, which basically acts as an AM/PM indicator, which is great. The hands and the hour markers are bright and easy to see, well designed. Detailing on the dial is very, very impressive. What this watch actually lacks, which is interesting, is any type of electronic illumination. Usually G-Shock watches will have some type of a backlight. Most recently, it's in the form of LEDs. You push a button and there's a little light somewhere here that lights up the dial so you can see it. This one doesn't have that. What it does have, of course, are lumed hands and hour markers, which are fantastic, and they actually work pretty well. But I think I would have liked for there to be dedicated backlighting, because even though Lume is great, it does require to be charged by light. So if you're in darkness for too long, you're just not really going to be able to see this watch too well in the dark. And that's just something to know. If you are anywhere else where there's light or you can charge it or things like that, you go outside, you go indoors and it's darker, this is going to be totally fine. As far as Lume goes, this is pretty good Lume, and I think it's satisfactory. So it's not a big deal, but you should know that this particular timepiece doesn't have a Lume function. There's a pusher on this case which is hidden. In my opinion, it's hidden. It was harder to find because you have these large metal ones here and the crown, and then you have this pusher right here, which, again, it's not hidden, but it's harder to see. But this is probably your most important pusher of all because it changes the different modes of the watch. And if you didn't know that, this is going to be a pain in the ass to use. So right now it's in the default mode, and you move it, and the first one it goes to is world time. Once you're in world time, you get different time zones, and there's a ring of reference times here. So what you do is you take out the crown, you kind of unlock it, it locks in a little bit, kind of like some of those crowns on JLC watches. So you pull it out, and then you have the time zone as indicated by the second hand. So it's pointing to LAX. And then you can move to Denver, Chicago, New York. And this is part of what they call the smart axis, making this more simple. So then I can look at these different time zones very easily. And then I'll put it back to LAX, you put it back down, and it goes back to world time mode. I think that's pretty cool. And what you have here is a pretty solid world time function. Then you go into stopwatch mode. This is a 1/20th of a second stopwatch, and it's pretty cool. You see those hands moving around pretty quickly. After about 30 seconds, that middle hand doesn't go as fast, but it's still tracking the time. And, I just love seeing these hands move so rapidly. Casio uses very advanced little motors in order to get a lot of these functions to work properly. And I like that they can replicate the digital functionality in this, in this analog way. So then you'll stop it, you get to read the time, and you can reset it. What I like about this is while you have to wait for the hands to move back in a lot of situations, you can start whatever function is you want before the hands move back, it will read it, and once the hands get to the right position, they'll just align themselves. Then you have a timer and alarm, and they work, in a pretty standard way. So what exactly makes this an aviation watch? I don't know. It kind of looks like an aviator with the analog dial. It has that world time function, but other than that, it's not really an aviation watch. But that's fine. I still like this one a lot. You don't actually have to be flying in order to use this watch, effectively. And pilots, will appreciate it because it's going to be on time. It's going to be something which is going to be very useful to them, and I quite like it a lot as a nicer looking high-end G-Shock that isn't kind of that digital thing. I haven't even put it on yet. I swear this review is going on like 11 minutes now, and I haven't even put the watch on. That's crazy. These metal pieces are actually a nice addition. The strap is quite long, so if you have larger wrists, you're not going to have a problem there. You'll look at the review for the precise measurements. I forgot the exact measurements of the watch. I hope you'll forgive me. But, this is a very attractive one, a good everyday watch. A little bit lower kind of on the nerd factor because, digital watches are going to be a lot more nerdy looking than analog ones, just hands down. That's how. And without any of those digital features, this is a very handsome piece. It's well made, the functionality is good, but again, you got to get the hang of it. But if you've already set the time and you don't need to do things like change the calendar manually, it's just kind of a very good set it and forget it watch, which is pretty easy to live with. And there's the hidden thermometer. Again, this is the Casio G-Shock G-Aviation GW-A1000. Retails for $500. And you can see the full review soon on blogtowatch.com. Thanks.